Okay, so exactly where we left, which was not at all a good point. I know that. It is not looking just anywhere looking like the bootstrap, the navigation bar, but we'll make it, no worries. So this is the point where we left, and now let's carry on from here. Okay. So the first thing that we'll be doing is go into the app.js, and what we want to do is make sure that our navigation bar looks good. First of all, that's important, and for that we have to include the CSS of the bootstrap. Now I would like my CSS to go before my custom CSS, which is app.css, and we'll be importing our CSS exactly like this guy. Okay, and but we don't know where the bootstrap CSS is there. In fact, finding it in the node modules is pretty much impossible with this kind of repo there. So what we'll be doing is press Command T, and this will index all of your project, and now you can look for bootstrap .min.css. Okay, and it gives us, it's inside the bootstrap /dist/css bootstrap min.css. So pretty neat way to find files in your folder. That's Atom. So import, and we're going to import it just exactly like that. So we'll go into the bootstrap /dist/css/bootstrap .min.css, and this should fix our navigation bar. And there we go, fix. And if I click on the login, it is there, not doing anything so far. Okay, that is good. Now so far this is a general application. Now I want my application to be mine, and in order to make my application mine, I need to go into the client, and I need to go into the GitHub viewer, click on that, and it gives you domain and client ID. This is actually the thing that makes your app yours. So how does it know that whatever the email and password is going to be going into your account? This is the guy, domain and client ID. And again, just a quick reminder, allowed callback and logout URL should be made to localhost colon 3000. Okay, so there we go. So I'll make a property there inside my class, and this should be always as default. Otherwise, how would I every time be setting up my properties? Remember, a good way of doing this is the default properties. Okay, so things are working out now for you. So just before our render in our class, I would like to define static, and this is going to be default props, basically the default properties. And it is going to have client ID and domain. So I'll simply have client ID. That is going to be my client ID blank for a moment. And it's going to have a domain, which is also going to be blank just for a moment. So I'll go in here, and first of all, let's copy our domain. I like to use this button, copy to clipboard. And there we go, our domain. And inside our client ID, this is our client ID. Yours will be for sure different than mine, for sure. It's going to be there. Okay. Now save this. Not going to make any difference in your app, but this is now your app because it's having a default property there. Okay. Now this is good so far. Now, as soon as the component mounts there, or this app.js mounts out, I want to do some of the things as soon as the component mounts there. Now, I'll just define a component will mount, and I'll talk in a second about the constructor as well. So component will mount, and I want to do this every single time. Okay, component will mount. I hope I wrote that correctly. Let me check. Component will mount. A slightest mistake, even in the case, can damage your application. Okay, I'll talk that about in a minute. First of all, what I want to show you is that when you actually log in for this app, let's just say we click on the login, that nice lovely pop-up comes in, that is being showed, the log is being showed. Then what does it gives us back when we logged in? Now it gives us two things, the ID token and profile, which I'll show you in the console log, don't worry about it. But it always gives you that, and you need to set those values. Okay, and in order to set those values, we all know that constructor is a very good point because it gives us the state, and we can just use set state method to set those states. Okay, so it's going to have an ID token, and that is going to be initially blank. And this is also a good point of checking that whether user logged in or not. We can check whether there is something inside the token or not. So very good thing to check on. And it's also give us a profile, which is an object. Now you might be wondering, hey, how does he know that this is going to be a profile? Don't worry, I'll show you and I'll prove it to you that what it gives you back. Right now, This code is little bit far ahead of ourselves, but it needs to be there, and I'll show you rest of the things as we go. Okay, this is good so far. Now, as soon as the things are being done, I want to check out whether the lock is having some things are there or not. So let's go into the component will mount, and I want to create a simple this dot lock there because this lock will be accessible there. And the method how you do is use a new, and by the way, I'm not showing you anything in here. Everything, if you go into the quick start there, everything is mentioned in the documentation itself. And what I'm trying to do is this exact same thing in here, this dot lock and everything he's doing inside the constructor. I don't like this method. I like to do it when the component mounts itself. Okay, and there we go. We'll be doing almost the same thing, and then we'll be using this lock show and everything. So again, a lot of things is there to read for you in the documentation. I'm not doing any magic in here. Okay, so this dot lock, and we are gonna do auth 0 lock. Make sure you take care of the case sensitivity again. Now this requires two parameters, that is client ID and your domain. Okay, and this all is being stored in the default properties. So how can we access that? So simply this dot props dot client ID, that's number one, and this dot props dot domain. Okay, so this is being accessed and is being stored inside the lock. So that is one good thing that we have done. Now let's just see this dot lock, and there is a method known as dot on. Okay, pretty weird, but yes, this is the method, and this method can check about authentication, whether it is being authenticated or not, if the profile is good or not, and all of such good things. So first of all, it gives us is authenticated. Okay, and it can also take a callback, and that is lovely because in the callback it gives us some of the auth result. Okay, and let's first of all use a fat arrow function there, and bear with me for a second. And this is our callback function in here. Okay, and that looks good so far. And what I want to do in here is just print out whatever there is in the auth result. Okay, so we're going to simply do a console log there for auth result. Okay, no big deal, but right now it's not going to work. If I save this and go back there, notice it's saying, hey, auth 0 lock is not defined. Logo is defined but never used. That is okay, but auth 0 lock is not defined. Okay, that is something weird. Okay, and the reason why auth lock is not defined is we haven't defined it. So this method needs to be defined. And are we importing the auth lock? Yep, we are not importing it. It's not recognizing. So pretty common mistake. And the reason why I am debugging all these mistakes in front of you so that you can also learn debugging is an important part. So let's just import auth lock, auth 0, and exactly auth 0 lock. And this is going to import from auth 0 lock, auth 0 dash lock. Okay, and I think this should fix the issue a little bit, but things are not going to work yet. If I click on the login, nothing is happening. Okay, so as soon as the component mounts, this is good thing. This is working on great, but it's not doing anything. Why? Simply because we haven't told it yet to do so. So we need to show this lock. And how can we do that? Now let's get out of this component did mount and let's show the lock, and let's call this as show lock. And what we'll be doing all inside this is fantastically and very big code of this dot lock dot show, and that's it. But still it's not gonna work, and you might be now getting mad at me. Why all the time? Let me just show you the reason, because this is a separate component and we are writing all the codes in app.js. So somehow we need to pass this function in here so that we can just get this lock there. Okay, and how we can do that, how we can pass this show lock in here. Now one good way of doing this is using the props, or simply saying properties. So we'll call this as on login. That is going to be a simple property, and this property will have simply this show lock will be accessible there. So this dot show lock, and we're going to bind this as well. We can do this in the constructor as well, but I think it's a good point to do it in here. Okay. Now this show lock is now accessible in the header. So let's go into the header.js and work on with this. Okay. And we are going to define a simple on login because that is accessible in the properties. So let's go into the class in here and let's call this as on login because we have passed on that property. And this on login will not do anything much there fancy. So it's going to simply say this dot props dot on login, accessing that and calling that. Okay. And obviously we need to bind this thing as well with the nav items. So let's just do that as well. So on click, it's going to be this dot on login, and let's bind it on the go. We can do this in the constructor as well, but I think this is good. Okay, now let's click on the login and notice the pop-up is there. Okay, that is nice. So quite a lot of things we have done in here, but luckily our auth login is there and good. Now I'll show a lot of things in here. A quick reminder. First of all, we went to app.js and we have defined a constructor. We are not using it right now. We have just defined it. We have owned the application by defining some default props there. Now we are using, as soon as the component mounts there, we are using auth lock, which is coming up directly from here. And we are using it to just communicate with the auth0. And we are saying that whenever the lock is on, we want to authenticate a user and we want to get whatever the result it is. I don't care whatever the result is. Okay, so let's just try that. And in fact, it would be a good point to open up our console. Okay, and console, nothing much there. Let's quickly reload the app and there we go. And it's saying one warning about the logo. Don't worry about it. We'll deal that. So let's click on the login, and I would like to go with the login with the Facebook, Google, Twitter, everything is there. Let's sign up first of all so that we can see what is there. So I'm going to be creating a test user. So we're going to simply say test@tester.com and the password would be test user. Let's do a quick sign up. And nope, you don't need to save that. And notice what we got back there. As soon as we signed up, we got an object which has got an access token, an ID token and everything there. But we are not interested in the sign up, obviously. So we are interested in the login. So let me do a login again. And notice it this time is saying, hey, you want to log in with this? Yep, that will work for me. So I'll clear out my console and I'll hit this guy. And I'm expecting something to be returned. Notice in here that we are returning an access token. We are returning an ID token, which is important for us. State and everything can be used, but right now we don't want to use that. So important is this ID token. Now also a lot of things are also being getting back. So we are getting tons of things are being returned. I don't want this. I just interested in the access token, ID token and all these things. Okay, that is one good thing for us. So we are getting auth result back, and this is all is coming in the auth result. Okay, so far things are working good. We have made a pretty good progress, trust me on that. Okay, now it's a good time to go into the app.js and work a little bit onto it, because right now things are just getting onto the console log, which is not a good thing that we want to do. But surely, I think it's a good idea to work in the next video because I think it's getting too much longer. And in the next video, we will learn about the local storage as well, and we'll try to get a profile from the user. Notice we have got just the ID token. We haven't got the profile yet. So we will get the profile in the next video.